All right, everybody, welcome into the Walkout presented by Joseph Toyota of Cincinnati. Paul Dehner Jr. here with you, along with Charlie Goldsmith. You know, we're kind of piecing it together and trying to figure out a way to make one show work, sort of like the third preseason game. You're just trying to find a way to get through it, survive, and advance. The Bengals played their third preseason game today. They lose 41-14, even by third preseason game standards. This was unwatchable, Charlie, but we did watch it. It's over, and now we can focus on the real games after this. Charlie, what's your thoughts?
You got the score wrong. What the score really was Colts 41, Bengals didn't show anything. So, the scheme, it's still safe, it's still secure. The priority of the preseason is still established. The Bengals did not show anything.
The scheme is on lock. It's in Fort Knox. No one will know, ever. Let's talk about it. Play that music.
It's the Walkout with Paul and Jay, with red-hot stories from post-game, interviews, analysis within the hour, fun here at the Growler.
All right, here we go. It is time to get into the Walkout presented by Joseph Toyota of Cincinnati. Here's what we got. I figured this isn't like a normal game. The Bengals didn't care about the game, so we don't either, Charlie. We are going to focus on the 53-man roster today. We're going to get into the offense. We're going to talk about the defense. We're going to talk about maybe some surprises that we got from this game. And we're going to get into all of that. We'll have your drive of the game. We have a little bit of injury news. There was some news to come out of today this way, and we'll get you forward to looking to what's next for this team as they go through the cuts and then on to Cleveland. Are we good with that?
I'm ready.
You're ready for that. Before we do that, though, Growl Pals, listen up. If you are tired of dealership runaround this season, do yourself a favor. Head over to see my guy, longtime Growl Pal Kevin, and the team at Joseph Toyota Cincinnati. At Joseph Toyota Cincinnati. The playbook's simple, upfront, honest, transparent, just like we do every episode of the Walkout. They're not going to say, oh, it's a weekend or it's a day, I don't really feel it. It's the third preseason game. No, we're here. We have energy just like they are at Joseph. Clear pricing, real numbers, a team that listens to what you need, not just what they want to sell you, whether you want a tough Tacoma, a RAV4, you want a Tundra that's tailgate ready. Joseph has a massive selection of new and pre-owned vehicles, all backed by level of service that would never be forced to play 4 quarters in preseason game number 3. From now through September 2nd, Joseph Toyota Cincinnati has rates as low as 1.99% for well-qualified buyers on qualifying vehicles. So if you're ready for a car buying experience, it's as gratifying as an episode of Drake and Josh, head to Joseph Toyota Cincinnati on Colerain or online anytime at josephtoyota.com. You can always call my buddy and Growl Pal Kevin, 513-385-1800. Joseph Toyota, the team that puts honesty in the driver's seat.
For those keeping track, the episode where Josh, not Drake, gets his driver's license is my third favorite in the show. Shout out Chives.
Third favorite. At some point, we just do the full ranking. It won't be today.
Let's go. No, wait for it. My favorite's the one where the high school football team doesn't have enough depth on the interior of the offensive line, which brings us to the Bengals' third preseason game.
It sure does. It sure does. Let's quickly, I want to just rip down through it. You can read on The Athletic. I have my 53 up now with a little bit of insight and Saturday's impact on all that. If you want to get deeper, let's just kind of cruise quickly through where things stand, maybe some nuggets from today if they're possible. Quarterback, I think we can figure that out pretty easily, right? There's going to be 2. Jake Browning is the backup. Joe Burrow is the starter. Desmond Ridder, not going to be around, I don't think.
It was, the pick six, the stumbling, the footwork, not just this game too. The other big day that Desmond got was that scrimmage the Bengals did, that like really long day of scrimmaging in between the week 1 and week 2 preseason games. Browning kind of got a day that day, and I don't think Ritter got a single first down. And then to play even worse in his other big chance than he did in that big chance he got earlier in camp. One of the biggest losers in camp, probably as great as he was at UC, was Desmond Ridder.
Yeah. And I mean, today asked about Dez in the post game, Zach Taylor. It sounded like he was even speaking about him in the past tense already. I don't think he meant to, and he was kind of catching himself a little bit, but I think there was a little bit of like, nice man. But I think we've seen them. They're going to be looking around at some of the tape of other quarterbacks to find a developmental guy. Is my best guess where they go with that. Running backs, it's got to be 3. Normally it's been 4. Feels like it has to be 3 right now. I will say this: we haven't seen much of Kendall Milton or Gary Brightwell for that fact in games. Fairly impressed with some of the stuff that we saw today and over a little bit of some of the games this year.
A very in the weeds Bengals storyline is how much they've struggled finding practice squad running backs over the years. Like, I don't think they've had a decent one in the preseason, like since Jacquez Patrick. Like, Jacquez Patrick was a revelation, and they've been searching the high of Jacquez Patrick for years until now. I think they've got at least one guy they can stash, if not 2, not 53-man roster quality, but much better than they've had in terms of practice squad options.
Yeah, Milton with a 41-yard run had 8 for 72 in this one. I mean, he had the 41, by the way, nice block by Caleb Etienne. I'll give him that play. We'll not talk about some of the other ones, but that was a nice one. Wide receiver, we're at 6. Mitch Tinsley's like, we're good, okay? He's out here, he's dressed, had a helmet, didn't use it, didn't go in. Mitch, just like Joe Burrow said he was, is on the 53. Good for him. What a camp, man.
Now, I'm surprised he didn't just play special teams, because I still haven't seen him establish any role on teams yet, which does feel like it should be a must for a guy if you're trying to be this team's like 5th wide receiver, but certainly nothing more that he could do just offensively.
And he doesn't play. Jermaine Burton does. And then Jermaine Burton gets hurt. Appeared that he might have re-aggravated the knee. Zach Taylor, not specific in terms of timeline or anything after this one, but he's had a knee injury. It looked like he maybe hurt it here. That could affect what the early part of the season looks like for him. Maybe he ends up being an IR person. Maybe that opens up a spot for someone like Isaiah Williams to sneak in number 6 if Burton's on an IR return. That might have some ripple effects depending on the severity of Burton's injury. We don't have that right now. Tight end, 4 guys didn't play, 2 did. There you go. That's what it's going to be. Gesicki, Fant, Sample, Hudson all sit, but Grandy and McLaughlin were out there all game. So there's your cut line right there. I think they made it probably pretty apparent. All right. Now for the thing. Offensive line. It's just a mess, Charlie. It's just a mess. I'll let you start on where you see the back of this offensive line room right now after today.
I'm going to start and stick with me for a second. I'm going to start with the Jalen Davis corollary, which is, wouldn't you just rather keep Jalen Davis on the 53-man roster, at least through the first cut down wire, than Jackson Kirkland? Or Matt Lee had a couple moments against the run today, but I would rather just have Cody Ford be this team's right guard and Lucas Patrick be the guard center flex. So I'm all in typically on keeping as much offensive line depth as you can, but just because of how bad this unit's been, I just carry 9 and keep Jalen Davis an extra day, because it was a wide open position battle and Cochran took a step back because of injury. Matt Lee has been hurt and he had his highs and lows today. Kirkland doesn't do much for me. He wasn't nearly as good as he was last year in camp and in the preseason. McLaughlin was hurt and basically had a lost summer as well. No one stepped up or took advantage of their opportunity. I'd rather just keep the corner and live to fight another day.
Yeah, I think Matt Lee stays. I talked to him a little bit after this one, and you heard Zach Taylor talk a little bit about him afterwards. I feel like they know enough about what he is, and they just wanted to see him go out and play during a game. I don't know if they're willing to go to Lucas Patrick as the backup center immediately without any help, especially the injuries that he's had, what he's had on his plate. He's hardly done center here. I know that he can do that, but they're probably not going to give up on Matt Lee just yet. You know what I mean? Like, not that
It's fair.
Him ending up on a practice squad is that. I just feel like when the rest of it's not good, at least you feel like you've seen a little bit over the time that Matt Lee's been here that you could maybe believe in him as a backup center or some kind of a piece for you. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that, but I think he might be good enough. Rivers, they just gave a couple of drives today, which suggests they just want to give him a little bit more work, but he's going to be one of your 2 backup guards for sure.
I think the big storyline from a 53-man roster perspective that people aren't talking enough about is a Bengals player who I'm not, just from a pure tackle standpoint, pure football standpoint, a player I'm not too fond of in Devin Cochran. He's been hurt, and he is this team's, Cody Ford's his own thing, but he's technically this team's backup tackle right now. If you would slot in Cody as, say, a guard, even though Cody would be the first tackle that would come off the bench. And Cochran's been hurt, and his status, we'll have to see more about where he's at right now. Plus, how much confidence is there in a guy who missed a solid chunk of training camp, who then also struggled in 24. I'll say it again, usually I'm all in on keeping 10 offensive linemen, but right now my 53, my backups would be Ford, Rivers, Lee, and I guess Cochran over Kirkland by a nose. And I wouldn't keep that 5th guy just to have 10. I'd just keep Davis because I'm expecting it all to get shaken up again on waiver wire day.
Yeah, that's just it. This is going to be a position that is going to be prime for waiver wire. So you're going to have whatever happens on between now and Tuesday. Wednesday's going to be another cycle. They're going to be hunting hard to see that they can find anybody. There could be a trade involved there as well. If they feel like, look, we're at whatever they're at 19 in the waiver wire. If they feel like, man, there's just somebody, it might be worth pulling some kind of a late round pick swap in order to try to land a player that somebody's going to cut that they know they're going to want. So a lot of work for them to do over the next few days in terms of deciphering what's happening with those other rosters. So we will see where that ends up. On that note, I do want to remind everybody our next live show where we can talk about the real players and not the ones that are on the back of the roster that played today, the ones that matter, is going to be on September 4th down at BetMGM. Down at our spot down there, Tom's Watch Bar at the Banks. It's a great spot to go, whether you're before a game, after a game, or you just want to come down and have a good time. We hope we can see you down there. We're giving away Bengals Jags tickets. We're going to be giving away a Joe Burrow jersey. I'm going to make people earn it, though. There will be games, but you will also have all of us media types down there offering predictions, takes, thoughts, taking your questions, and then hanging out afterwards for Cowboys and Eagles kicking off the season on Thursday Night Football. One of our favorite nights of the year. We cannot wait to see you guys down there for that. All right, let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball, Charlie. Defensive line, another bit of a mess. I made an adjustment after today, and I wasn't expecting to make any adjustments after today. I kicked it down to 9 defensive linemen from 10 and just went ahead and pushed Howard Cross to the practice squad. I don't think they'll have a problem stashing in there. Shaka Hayward. So I went 6 linebackers instead of 5, which I had planned on. And it stems from some of the stuff that we heard after the game. Let me start with the defensive line, and then we'll get to the Shaka portion of this. Howard, I think this is the spot that is most likely, if you were giving me pick one position that gets added via waiver, it's defensive tackle. Let's not forget, they had McKinley Jackson out here playing all day. And I asked Zach Taylor about that after the game. I was like, is something you were looking for? And you could hear, he said, we were looking for him to show us that he can give us a level of consistency. When you are a 330 plus pound defensive tackle, having to go out there and play an entire 3rd preseason game is a punishment. Okay, they were saying we are not happy with your camp, and that shows a bit of the concern that they have in the defensive tackle room on down.
It was like the first week of camp before anything really happened. Takes was that McKinley Jackson would outsnap Chris Jenkins this season. Obviously, that was way off, and that's just a sign to me of how Jenkins has had a great camp. How bad of a camp McKinley Jackson has had. He did have some real flash moments, but the lack of step forward development, very consistently in practice too. We saw Howard Cross getting reps over him on the depth chart in the pecking order. Very little confidence there in the defensive tackle room. Another guy who I don't think we'll be naming here is Taven Bryan. But that idea was, all right, yeah, you get a guy who had played some real snaps, played some real games, but then he didn't get you anything. You're still wide open there. Do you keep Isaiah Thomas on the roster just in case Hendrickson misses a game? So you have that's where you're at, because you have no defensive tackle options behind the big three. And while big three, it's not like this is the 27 Yankees behind the top three. Disappointing camp for McKinley Jackson, who will still play, but this is a spot where they could claim a defensive tackle who could then be active 2 weeks later against the Browns.
No question. I mean, if there's somebody that falls through the cracks there, that's a very real possibility. Mine, I have, Hendrickson under assumption, Slayton Hill, Shamar Stewart, Chris Jenkins, Joseph Osai, Miles Murphy, Cam Sample. I do have McKinley Jackson on. I have Cedric Johnson going to IR return, I would imagine. And so, but yeah, that leaves spots, cross on the PS, and everybody else out. So the other piece of this, I did that, adding at linebacker and going with 6 linebackers. Shaka Hayward comes out. He gets made a captain, okay, and doesn't hardly play. And really a huge vote of confidence for a guy who you would think this would be his day. He's got to go out there and prove it one more time, right? But that really wasn't the case. He just got the vote of confidence. Let's start here with what Zach Taylor had to say about making Shaka a captain after the game.
I think just the growth overall from where he's come over the last couple of years. I think that he's had a real good camp, and just I've been impressed with just overall his development level over the course of this offseason training camp, and just felt it was appropriate for him to be a captain.
Thought it was appropriate. I mean, I just don't think that's something that you do for somebody who you're then going to cut in a couple of days. I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't know. Maybe he's like, I can't keep you, but I can make you a captain. Maybe you do that. But I don't feel that way. I did talk to Shaka after the game, and he's somebody who I don't know if came across as a youngish player in the past is fair, but he played a little out of control, a little wild. That was kind of part of the problem with him. I don't think they felt like they had the maturity and consistency. That has looked different, and it sounds different. Here's Shaka Hayward after today's game talking about maturity and being a captain and finding that growth point.
Was there a difference for you this offseason? Coach was just talking about how he feels like he saw a lot of growth.
Yeah, I just felt like there needed to be a change just within myself. This offseason, I knew this was a big year for me in my career. So I took that, just a mental note in my head, every offseason workout, every TA camp, just trying to get better. And just having that growth mindset throughout the whole summer, throughout the whole camp.
Did you change anything? Did you change anything in your team or your regiment?
I would say more consistent than I've been. More on top of just every aspect I can. I tried to leave no stone unturned.
Was that, is it just coming off of last year? Was there a conversation or something that sparked that in you, or just
just the way last season kind of ended, or the way it began? I began on the practice squad, end of the year, having a fumble on punt, doing some good things on special teams, doing some good things on defense whenever I got my chance. I just wanted to continue to build on that.
I mean, these decisions obviously matter a lot to all of you, what's going to happen on Tuesday, but given how much you feel like you've grown and how much last year being on the practice squad was a reality thing for you, how does Tuesday feel like a huge moment? If you could make it, would that be a real breakthrough in your opinion?
Definitely. It's no matter which way it goes, it's definitely just going to keep propelling me to go forward. Either way, it's just going to motivate me to go forward, go harder to get where I want to get in this league.
A low-key huge winner of camp. And he's going to stick around. He's somebody who's probably, even if he gets cut, will be on this team at some point this year. That's the nature of the linebacker position, and assuming that they would be able to stash him. So to me, it's interesting going to 6. One, they've revamped that room so much. And 2, they're going to use linebackers a little bit more anyway. So maybe you could hear the argument for keeping extra. We know how much Al Golden loves his linebackers. Maybe that's kind of what we're seeing here, is this is their turn to go a little bit more towards their LBs and keeping an extra.
Again, I believe so strongly in keeping 10 offensive linemen and 10 defensive linemen in theory, in paper. But we're at the point with what we haven't seen in those position rooms, just keep the best 53. And I mentioned Jalen Davis earlier. It could have just as easily as been Shaka Hayward. And you make a great point, especially with the additional ideas and concepts of how they could use linebackers and the special teams impact that Shaka would provide as well. It would probably could also end up changing on Thursday when they get that, waiver wire lineman on either side of the trenches. But Shaka actually is one of the guys who played well enough to merit the the first cut down spot, certainly compared to the competition at different positions.
Yeah, no doubt. So that room, Demetrius Knight, by the way, it sounds like is okay. Would have played this weekend, is what Zach Taylor said after the game. So he was held out of the scrimmage the other day, but no worries there. He's your starter. Wilson, Knight, Barrett Carter, Oren Burks, potentially Joe Giles Harris, and Shaka Hayward. We'll see how that plays out. Corners, not a ton that happened here today, or that's any surprise right now. I think at this point, Cam Taylor-Britt and Dax Hill, Josh Newton and DJ Turner. DJ Ivey's going to be part of this. Marco Wilson made a play today. You tweeted this and we've talked about this. They like Marco Wilson, and I don't think, I'd be curious if he's active on game day. He might be active on game day. Yeah. Which is surprising, when you consider the rest of the room. And so I will see what that looks like.
It's a part of the whole, third down being the Wild West in terms of matchups, and they'll have different rotations and different concepts, and Marco gives them a different look. And he might just be active on games where there is a specific matchup, like, all right, this is a good Marco matchup as opposed to a good DJ Ivey matchup. But I wouldn't even have Marco 5 over Ivey at 6 right now, is how I'd view that cornerback room.
Which might end up being the case. I mean, that could end up being the case. Maybe it's a special teams decision there at some point, but if they have a real role for them on defense, they can find other ways to fill that. Safety, Geno Stone and Jordan Battle are going to be your starters there. They seem comfortable with that. Tyson Anderson has handily won the third safety role. He didn't even participate today. Dejon Anthony is very much on the bubble here, and then he has an injury to go with it today, a hamstring that could affect that. Maybe they use that as a way to IR return him to stash and clear space, but they're looking for safety. They're looking for somebody to go out and sign into that position, even if it's a core special teamer, fourth safety that could replace Dejon. I think that's possible. Certainly when you consider that Dejon was out there before he got hurt, I think he might have been out there the vast majority of this game.
This is a very pro Tyson Anderson podcast, but I think Dejon more lost the safety 3 battle than Tyson won it. Sure, he had that pick on the terrible overthrow by Josh Johnson, but I was watching this. Like, Tyson didn't do anything to go out and stake the claim. And I think Dejon also was the one who got the first opportunity to kind of, when Geno was down for a bit. Dejon's also a guy who, the Bengals got him in the 7th round, but really he was higher up on their board. There were just some different reasons why he fell to the 7th, and there was some real talent there. And maybe he's actually a safety 3 with developmental upside. He could be the pick that on day 3 the Bengals didn't get this season. Well, no. If you were talking like that, just the answer to that is no. And he's one of the guys who missed his opportunity the most in training camp. He had an awesome training camp last year, and there was just none of that this year. And that leads to the Bengals now looking to bolster that safety room. And great game today, PJ Jules. Great job. Still a converted linebacker who has, I believe, no true free safety experience. And what they would need behind Geno Stone would be someone who would at least give you more opportunity potential if you needed him to be able to line up down the field.
Yeah, it's again, it's going to be a more active waiver wire compared to things that we've seen in the past. At least I think they'd like it to be. Maybe it doesn't end up that way. Maybe they don't feel like they really like anybody out there, but I wouldn't be surprised if I saw that the Bengals made 3, 4, 5 different claims on different guys. We've seen that in the past. They've made lots of claims. They don't always work out. I think you ran down the list a couple episodes ago. It's not inspiring, but I think they're just looking. I think in that back 4 or 5 spots in the roster, they feel weak. They feel like they have holes. They feel like they want to feel better about those spots and are willing to potentially make some moves from other clubs there. All right, let's move on to the Joseph Toyota of Cincinnati drive of the game. So I'm going to go back to this, Charlie. I'm going to do the first 2 drives of the game where some portion of decent Bengals rotational players were out there for this Bengals defense, and they only gave up a field goal. And considering where this group has potentially come from, they did better against Washington in terms of the backups and stuff, but they end up giving up 11 plays, 56 yards, and a field goal. And after that, 5 plays, 13 yards with a penalty and a punt, a couple of plays in there. Credit them for coming out and not being too bad, making a few plays. It's hard to really take much from this game, but I'll take a little bit of that. Marco Wilson, that was when he had his PBU in that part.
Yeah, this was the part of the program where I was going to bring up Marco Wilson, but fortunately, we've already gotten an opportunity for me to bring up my affinity for Marco. On that second drive, PJ Jules had a very nice tackle and a terrible, from the referee's perspective, taunting penalty, but let's just give credit to that play by PJ. And then Isaiah Thomas had the sack. I think he's a perfectly fine practice squad defensive end, which is a room similar to running back. It's felt like they've struggled finding that depth at. I think Thomas is a real practice squad level type guy who, more likely than not, because of the injury attrition you see at that position, could end up playing a game or a few for the Bengals this season.
Yeah, he shows up every once in a while. I feel like which is more than you can say from a lot of people that they've had in the back of that room in the past. So, we'll see how all this plays out. This will culminate over the next few days. 4 p.m. on Tuesday's the deadline. I'm going to guess we might see a rollout of some cuts between now and then, like a lot of teams have been doing. I mean, some teams that played on Thursday, Friday, they were out there with their first round of cuts already happening, just getting all of the ball rolling on that. But so 4 o'clock on Tuesday, 4:15 on Tuesday, Zach Taylor will speak to us on a conference call. After that, Charlie and I will be back with a little bit of a cut down walkout where we'll go through some of the things that we heard and learned from that, and we'll be rolling from there. And then it'll be the 4th, the 9/4. We will have the live show down at BetMGM, and then it's Bengals versus Browns. And we get to talk about a lot over the next 2 weeks, even more. Got to get
Trey
a fast
Hendrickson?
start, Charlie.
A fast
No, God,
start.
yes. I know. I was gonna do that. We did have the Trey Hendrick. Trey was trying to make it known that he's out here. Okay. He was like watching every snap, signaling stuff to guys. Wants all the fans to know I'm involved. Okay. I'm doing it. Felt a little bit showy.
I think that's very
showy.
I think that's exactly right. We forgot, Paul. Will Wagner had a tackle.
Oh, we didn't talk specialist. You're right. We did, what is going to happen in the long snapper battle? I think it's been close enough that you go with the devil,
I agree.
It's Cal.
I agree.
Yeah. But I think they're holding on to Will as long as they can, hoping nobody takes him in case there's a hiccup in the first month or whatever. I think that's please. They're just saying, please, can we keep Will Wagner around just in case we need him?
Or
is probably going to be
maybe he's the trade piece for that offense.
Trade piece. Deal Wags. I love it. I love that idea. All right. On that note, we will be talking Trey Hendrickson. That I would expect that to start ramping up here pretty much as soon as we get through these cuts, that conversation. Do you think Trey's showing this was it was a reaction to the Micah Parsons laying down on the training table? Do we think it was like, look, I'm not doing that. Okay. I'm out here. Or his agent was like, look, just don't go laying on anything. Whatever you do. Maybe that's what
I don't want to say yes, because that would be a mean thing to say to my birthday buddy. But I'm not going to say no.
Not going to say no. Just saying, you can see how we would surmise that. But good for him. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening to The Walkout, presented by Joseph Toyota of Cincinnati. We will be talking to you again after cuts on Tuesday. Looking forward to it. Have a great weekend, everybody.